The Seahawks have upgraded their offensive line with Grey Zabel coming in the first round from North Dakota State. We're going to be taking a deep dive into Grey Zabel and what he brings to the table for the Seahawks coming up here on our bonus episode of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thanks as always for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Continuing our NFL Draft Coaches series, fired up to have Dan Larson from North Dakota State joining us to break down Grey Zabel, the first-round pick. And Coach, first off, congratulations having a first-round selection from your offensive line. I know that had to be a really proud moment for you and the program.
Yeah, I think, obviously having quarterbacks come through here over the course of the last decade and have gone in the first round. I think you always kind of understand how quarterbacks can get drafted high. I think offensive line, it takes, a little bit more. They got to really believe in you. And, to be in the room and hear it go quiet and see Grey and his family celebrating, that was a special moment for sure.
And Grey is such a remarkable story, a 0-star recruit. Based on the research I had, he was 240 pounds when he was coming out of high school. What did you guys see from a recruiting standpoint that jumped out to you in terms of his potential, given that size and the fact that he obviously was very under the radar as a prospect with only a few offers to play Division I football?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, was that he was a multi-sport player. So, football, basketball, baseball, was a pitcher in baseball. So, you got to have some confidence and some moxie to stand up on the mound and throw strikes when you need to throw strikes. They were champions in all three of those sports as well, too. So he was a winner. He was a proven leader. Then he just saw some of his natural athleticism when he was playing. And, we've always kind of had a little bit of a niche here at NDSU. Like, we'll take some kids that are a little undersized in high school and, we have a process. We believe in the process. And if they have the athleticism, they have the competitiveness, they have that physicality and nastiness to play, we don't worry too much about the size. We think that part's going to come on. So it was a lot of those things that we saw in Grey, to start the recruiting process. And then certainly they came out the more you went through it and got to know him.
From a developmental standpoint, considering where he started at when he came to North Dakota State, when did you start to see the potential for him being an NFL player? And was there a moment where it clicked, like, this isn't just an NFL player, but this guy could be an early round draft pick that can play quickly in the National Football League?
Yeah, I'll be quite honest with you. I don't know that we ever allow ourselves to think that way here. I think the best part about Grey was he worked like he was going to be, a guy not selected in the draft. Just had to keep proving himself every day. So I think we all recognized how talented he was going to be. He had to play for us as a freshman during COVID, a true freshman during COVID. That's really hard to do. Played multiple positions. So I think you started to see that he's got flexibility. He's got the character and the intelligence to be able to handle multiple positions. But, I think it was just the process that he went about, like this senior year especially. Every practice really hard, never passed up opportunities and reps, would jump in at any of the 5 spots in the offensive line, was a leader in every aspect of it. And so I don't know that we ever allowed ourselves to ever think that he was anything more than just a really good football player that played for North Dakota State, but I think all those intangibles that he had started coming out when this draft process started going. And, all of a sudden you start talking to a few more scouts or some front offices and you're like, man, there's a real chance that, this might be a little bit different than some of the other guys we had go through the draft process.
When you consider, obviously, an FCS program at North Dakota State, not going to be on TV with big markets most of the time, Seahawks fans, probably most of them, the only footage they've seen is the draft footage of Grey Zabel.
Right.
How would you describe the strengths of his game, what his bread and butter is to the 12s out there coming in? And is there a part of his game that you look at and think is underrated or not appreciated enough that you think gives him a chance to be really successful right out of the gate?
Yeah, I think when you watch him, his feet are really good. And so he's hardly ever in a bad position with his body. I mean, we teach our guys, we're trying to stay as square as possible in the run game. We try to stay as square as possible in the pass game. Like, teams are going to have to run really good edges, or they're going to take really good angles and pass pro in order to beat us. Those parts, he was really dialed in with. I think the one thing that doesn't go, as maybe people don't talk about as enough is, he was a really good, dominant run blocker. I mean, he can get his hands. His feet are just as active. His knees can drive. He's a strong player. I mean, he is lower body, upper body is really strong. I think some of the physicality that he's going to bring, to the interior part of it, I think that part will kind of, you see him playing tackle. It's like those guys got some finesse. When he gets out and runs and he's got an opportunity to put his shoulder pads under a guy's chin, I think people are going to be surprised at how well of a run blocker he can be from an inside standpoint.
As a former running back coach myself, I know that every single coaching staff has very slight little tweaks that go into what their blocking techniques are, what they're looking for on zone runs. I'm curious from your perspective with your offensive line background, when you're evaluating guards specifically, what are the boxes that you are looking to be checked off when you're looking at film for players? And especially with somebody like Zabel, who's been playing tackle. I know in some systems there's not as much carryover in terms of what you're looking for from your tackles with guards. And then there's some systems like Seattle's wide zone where there is carryover there between what tackles and guards are going to do, where you can translate that to what you think a guy's going to do in the inside at the NFL level. Yeah,
that's a really good question. I think, the one thing we look for from a guard standpoint, interior player, is that, a lot of times, whether we're running on a 3 technique or a 2-eye, we're trying to get to an outside armpit. We're trying to get to an outside number. And so do they have the quickness to be able to, in their first 2 steps and then 3rd and 4th step, can they overtake that aiming point to a 3 technique? Okay, to a shade, can they set an edge? Yeah. Especially if they're working back behind. Like, just do they have that 1st and 2nd step quickness to get it going? And if we can find guys that can do that, I think that's a big part of it. Guys that stand up and reach in the zone schemes, it just sometimes there's a struggle to get the play running on the line of scrimmage the way that you want to get it running. I think he's going to have a lot of carryover from some of the things that we adjusted this past year while he was playing tackle. I think it's going to fit into hopefully a little bit more of, or hopefully it will fit into more of like what they want to do, under Coach Kubiak now and some of that wide zone principles at the 49ers that he came from. But I think it's going to be, he'll feel comfortable if they're talking about running off the ball, if they're talking about trying to reach an outside number, trying to set an edge on a shade. Like, I think there's going to be some comfort levels to him in terms of, been there, can do it. Now I'm doing it against some really good players, obviously. And so the work ethic will have to kick in. But I don't think you'll get caught off guard with some of the coaching points or some of the things that they're emphasizing to get the job done.
You have mentioned earlier here in this interview that you guys don't think about the pros with your players. You don't try to think ahead. It's a situation where you're not trying to put the wagon ahead of the horse.
Yep.
But you guys have had an incredible amount of success in Fargo with developing offensive linemen that have been able to get into the NFL. The Seahawks have 2 of them now on their roster. What is it about the way that the program, the way that you guys approach developing players, what are you most proud of, particularly when it comes to players like Grey Zabel, Jalen Sundell, who now have found their way to the Seattle Seahawks? You got other guys that are in the league as well. What are you most proud of, and what are you most proud of in the sense of preparing guys to be able to step in and be able to compete right away in the NFL?
Yeah, the one thing, you can get a little choked up and emotional talking about these guys. They never cared about what position they ever had to play here. They just wanted to do what was best for the team. Jalen would have probably started for us at tackle, in 2021, his first year really as a starter. We needed somebody with some leadership characteristics. We put him at center. He had never played center before, and developed himself into an all-conference and would have been an all-American center if it wouldn't have been some injuries as a sophomore and junior. Well, he jumps over to left tackle. Hadn't taken a lot of left tackle reps going into a senior year and performs at an all-American level there. Probably from his standpoint, it would have been better to put another year of dominating and being healthy from a center standpoint on film from an NFL aspect of it.
Yep.
They want you to play tackle, best for the team, go do it. Gray's played all 5 positions here. And, at one point in time, we had some injuries late in the season. I talked about moving him from left tackle to, ironically, left guard, and putting another one of our guys at left tackle. Coach, whatever you need us to do. It's just the mentality that they have that they'll jump in and into any situation and they'll just compete. And so, I think they come in with, they still have that, because this was all during their senior year, right? So they're just continuing to put what's the need of the team. We'll do whatever we have to in order to win. We're willing to work. I think that part carries over right away when they go into these camps. And, the only thing I can ever talk about is North Dakota State. I can't talk about any other programs. I just know if there's 10 reps out there and you tell our guys to take 10 reps, they're going to take 10 and try to earn 11. And I think that's something that might be missing a little bit at times. They're not satisfied with where they're at. They want to continue to improve and get better. The goal might be to make it to the NFL, but then the goal gets adjusted after that. Okay, I want to make the roster. I want to start. And so I just think they keep attacking that part of it. And quite honestly, it's how they are when they come here as freshmen, and they just start that process. And then when they get past here, some of the guys that have been successful, they've just been able to start that process all over again. They're just doing it from a professional standpoint. It's a great place to coach. It's a tremendous group to coach. You'd have a hard time with me ever picking a favorite. I love them all. They all work incredibly hard. They've done more for me than I'll ever do for them.
And John Schneider mentioned the extra reps of the Senior Bowl. That's the mentality where that came from. And the Seahawks are hoping that plays out here in his rookie season, that he's just going to dive right in and going to be able to help out this football team, as several other North Dakota State linemen have in the past several years. Coach Larson, it's been a pleasure to speak with you, and I'm going to wish you best of luck. I believe you're now the offensive coordinator there at North Dakota State. Best of luck to you in that new position, and congratulations once again on having one of your offensive linemen selected in the first round.
I appreciate it. He'll work his butt off for you guys. I know he's excited to play for the Seahawks and to play in front of the 12. So I appreciate the time as well, too.
Best of luck, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
When we return here on Locked On Seahawks, I'm going to take a step back and look at the 2025 schedule for Seattle, and going to be diving into some revenge games, both for and against the Seahawks. One of the more enticing storylines coming out of yesterday's schedule reveal. I'll get to that up next here on our bonus edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I appreciate how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team in a key matchup or diving into player props for teams still remaining in the playoff hunt. From Tyrese Halliburton nailing clutch jumpers in the fourth quarter for the Pacers to Nikola Jokic's dominant triple-double prowess, FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine those live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com today and claim your $250 in bonus bets. Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. And again, thank you to Coach Larson, Dan Larson from North Dakota State, offensive line coach, now becoming the offensive coordinator for the Bison, for joining us here on our NFL Draft Coaches Series. Shifting back to the schedule that was revealed yesterday. We talked about a lot of storylines on yesterday's show, but there's one in particular. The more that I looked at the schedule and the way things set up, it is not uncommon for NFL teams to play against players and coaches that previously were in the organization. That is the modern NFL. There's a ton of roster turnover with free agency, trades, all the incoming rookies. There's a lot of roster movement, a lot of personnel changes. So that's not abnormal. With that being said, this has to be one of the more prominent seasons in terms of revenge games for the Seahawks, where they have a number of players that they moved on from the last year or two that they are going to be facing off against in their 2025 schedule. It's more of the noteworthy big names, guys that got big contracts or were incredibly productive for the Seahawks. They're going to be playing against a lot of these guys this year. And so it feels like the revenge game aspect is going to be brought up a notch or two. And it starts, obviously, in week 2 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. DK Metcalf requesting a trade from the Seahawks in March. They oblige. They deal into Pittsburgh. They get a second-round pick in exchange for him. And now he is going to be the clear number 1 receiver in Pittsburgh after they traded away George Pickens post-draft to the Dallas Cowboys. He's clearly going to be receiver 1. Now, who's going to be throwing to him in week 2? We'll have to wait and see. It might be Aaron Rodgers. Maybe it's Kirk Cousins, or it could be Mason Rudolph or rookie Will Howard. It remains to be seen who's going to be playing quarterback for the Steelers. But that is going to be very quick to see DK Metcalf going against his former team in week 2, wearing Steelers black and gold. And you go to week 9, Bobby Wagner, this is not the first time he's had a revenge game. He played against the Seahawks with the Rams several years ago before coming back for a season to play for the Seahawks again. Commanders didn't play the Seahawks last year. He could say whatever he wants, but there's certainly going to be some taking personal in a game like this when, Seattle didn't bring him back after he had another all-pro season playing for them in 2023, had a really good year for the Commanders, helping them get to the NFC Championship game last year. And so I don't know that he would ever throw around the word revenge, but absolutely that game is going to have a different set of meaning for him going against the franchise that in 2 different instances he played with and had a ton of success as a perennial All-Pro. When he goes into the Hall of Fame, it's going to be built on what he did with the Seattle Seahawks for the most part. But the chance to play against 54, a team in Washington that has a real good chance to be competing for a Super Bowl this year after coming up just short in the NFC title game this past January, that's going to be a high-stakes game. That storyline just makes it all the more fascinating heading into that Sunday night game. And as far as a couple other players to mention here, it's in the same game, the Tennessee Titans in week 12. That's going to be a road contest. If you've been looking at Instagram, Tyler Lockett has already had some video posted with him sporting his new Titans helmet. There's some excitement with him playing for this new team in Tennessee. And they also have Draymond Jones, who the Seahawks cut as a cap casualty this offseason. And Jones is going to want to make a statement there. Both these guys getting cut, it was different reasons. Tyler Lockett, clearly just the inflated salary on his cap at the age he was at. The Seahawks could not absorb that, and they needed the salary cap space. Draymond Jones just did not produce at the level that they were expecting him to with the 3-year contract that they gave him worth more than $16 million per year. He just didn't play anywhere close to that level, but he's going to have something to prove going into that game too, with how that went down in 2 seasons in Seattle, not even getting through that 3-year contract before getting cut. There's going to be a chip on the shoulder for both these guys, albeit for maybe some different reasons. They were both cut. And so I think that there's definitely going to be a revenge factor at play there. Tyler Lockett is the nicest guy you're going to meet, but he's also incredibly competitive, and the opportunity to go out and show out against the team that he's played his entire career for up to this point at home in front of his new fans, he's going to relish that opportunity in week 12. And certainly Draymond Jones is going to want to prove some things when his 2 seasons in Seattle just did not go as planned. On the flip side, the Seahawks have a few newcomers on their roster that are going to be going into this season with a chance to get some revenge on their former team. And we got to start at the quarterback position with Sam Darnold. Minnesota Vikings will be coming to town in week 13. So that means J.J. McCarthy, assuming he stays healthy, he's going to be more than halfway through his first year as a starter. He might be clicking by that point. We'll have to wait and see how things roll with that offense with a new quarterback that has no regular season snaps on his resume. But Darnold versus McCarthy is going to be a really fun storyline there. Does Sam Darnold lead his new team to victory against his former team? Does J.J. McCarthy come in and show why the Vikings picked him early in the first round and why they stuck with him as their quarterback for the future instead of re-signing Darnold? That is a huge storyline there. And I think this is a game that's going to be a big one anyway, because you're looking at 2 teams that very much could be near the top of the NFC standings, and you're jockeying not just for division championships, you're jockeying for playoff seeding as well. That, to me, is a game that could be one that potentially gets flexed to prime time, depending on where these 2 teams are at and where things stand in week 13, that juncture of the season. But Sam Darnold gets the opportunity to get revenge 2 weeks before then, the first of 2 opportunities for Cooper Kupp. He gets to go back to LA in week 11. And I expect that Rams fans are going to give him a fairly warm welcome because he didn't leave on his own accord. This was a release. It's similar to Bobby Wagner coming back to Seattle for the first time. Fans warmed up to him. I think it's going to be similar in LA. And he can say whatever he wants. He might not have that revenge gene in his DNA, but he's going to want to go out and prove to the Rams that, hey, you shouldn't have let me go. I've still got plenty left in the tank. So that is going to be a big game. And the last one here, let's talk staff members. Clint Kubiak, New Orleans Saints, started off red hot on offense last year. They were scoring a bunch of points the first few weeks, and then players just started dropping like flies. Quarterbacks going down, receivers going down, offensive linemen going down. And suddenly that offense became a mess. And a lot of people in New Orleans were blaming the coordinator. But when you have that many injuries at key positions, you've got a rookie quarterback in Spencer Rattler that was playing a lot of games late in the year, and he was throwing to fourth and fifth string receivers. There were so many things working against Kubiak, and that staff was completely overhauled. I think Clint Kubiak's going to be going into that game in week 3. It's very early in the season, but he's going to want to make a statement with his play calling and the way that his offense is going. And I think he's going to want to show, hey, my offense can be like it was those first couple of games when we have healthy players. We can put points on the board. And I think there's going to be that wanting to send a message there at home in week 3 against the New Orleans Saints from a coach perspective. And maybe even John Benton's looking at it that way. He's been around the league. He's coached in a number of places. But hey, I'm 1 year and out in New Orleans. Let's go take care of business against my most recent employer here. I think there could be some coach revenge that is at tap there. And that just adds extra spice to a lot of these matchups. It does feel like there's more high-stakes revenge games this year for the Seahawks, both on their team and guys that have departed and are playing elsewhere. And I think that just makes 2025 schedule that much more fun. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, as we do every year, it's our annual ranking opposing quarterbacks episode. I'm going to have a really fun special guest joining me for that, and we're going to be taking a deep dive into all 14 quarterbacks, maybe 15 or 16 that we'll discuss as well with a few teams that are going to have competitions. We're going to be sorting all that out from worst to best coming up on tomorrow's Blue Friday show. Make sure that you're listening in and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Go Hawks.